Before this story begins, imagine standing in a massive auditorium where thousands of people are watching, the lights are bright, and the judges are known for being brutally honest. Now imagine a small kid walking onto that stage, a kid nobody expects anything from. But by the end of this story, that same kid will make the entire crowd explode with emotion and leave one of the toughest judges in the world completely speechless. If you love stories about unbelievable talent, courage, and dreams coming true, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest power. The auditorium buzzed with energy. The lights of the stage glowed brightly as the audience waited for the next contestant to appear. The judges sat behind their desk, flipping through their notes and sipping their drinks. Some acts had been amazing, others had been, well, forgettable. Then the announcer's voice echoed through the theater. Please welcome Miguel Santos, from the Philippines. A small figure walked out from backstage. The crowd clapped politely, but there was a hint of curiosity in the room. Miguel looked about 10 years old. He was small, skinny, and dressed simply in a neat white shirt, dark jeans, and sneakers that looked slightly worn. His black hair was carefully combed to the side, and he held the microphone with both hands like it was something precious. When he reached the center of the stage, the lights shone down on him. The giant audience suddenly felt overwhelming. Simon leaned forward slightly. "So, what's your name?" he asked. "Miguel Santos, sir," the boy replied softly. "And how old are you, Miguel?" "I'm 10 years old." A small wave of awe moved through the audience. Another judge smiled. "And where are you from?" "I'm from Cebu, in the Philippines." The audience clapped warmly. Simon tilted his head. "All right, Miguel, and what are you going to do for us today?" Miguel took a deep breath. "I'm going to sing." Simon raised an eyebrow slightly. The show had already seen dozens of singers that season. "Okay," Simon said cautiously. "And what song will you be singing?" Miguel's eyes sparkled just a little. "I will sing an Elvis Presley song." The audience murmured. Some people smiled. Others looked unsure. A 10-year-old kid singing Elvis? That sounded unusual. Simon leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. His expression clearly said he was skeptical. "Well," Simon said, "Elvis is not easy to sing. Let's see what you've got." Miguel nodded. The music began. At first, the theater was quiet. Then the opening guitar of "Can't Help Falling in Love" filled the room. Miguel closed his eyes for just a second. And then he started singing. "Wise men say, only fools rush in. But I can't help falling in love with you." The entire theater froze. Nobody expected that voice. It was rich, smooth, deep with emotion far beyond what anyone expected from a 10-year-old child. People in the audience immediately leaned forward. A woman in the front row put her hand over her mouth. Simon's eyebrows shot up. Miguel continued singing, his voice steady and pure. It wasn't just the notes, it was the feeling behind them. Every word sounded heartfelt, like the song meant something personal to him. The giant theater slowly filled with something magical. The crowd that had been casually watching just moments ago was now completely silent. Miguel sang the next lines gently, his voice floating through the room. "Like a river flows surely to the sea. Darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be." A man in the audience whispered, "Wow." One of the judges shook her head in disbelief. Simon leaned forward again, now fully focused. This kid wasn't just good. He was special. Miguel held the microphone close as he reached the chorus again, his voice growing stronger, more confident. "Take my hand. Take my whole life too." The crowd started clapping softly with the rhythm. Even Simon looked stunned. Miguel opened his eyes and looked out at the sea of people. For a moment, it looked like he wasn't scared anymore. It looked like he belonged there. When the final note came, the theater exploded. The entire audience jumped to their feet. Thunderous applause filled the room. People shouted. Some even whistled loudly. One judge stood up immediately, clapping above her head. Another judge wiped a tear from her eye. Simon remained seated for a moment, staring at Miguel with a shocked expression. Then slowly, he stood up too. The crowd got even louder. Miguel looked overwhelmed, his small face glowing with joy and disbelief. When the cheering finally calmed down, the judges began their comments. The first judge leaned forward. Miguel, that was absolutely beautiful. Your voice is incredible, but more than that, you made us feel something. And that's what music is all about. The audience clapped again. The second judge smiled warmly. You're only 10 years old, but you sing with the heart of someone much older. That was magical. Miguel smiled shyly. Then all eyes turned to Simon. Simon rested his hands on the table, staring at Miguel for a moment before speaking. You know, Miguel, when you walked out here and said you were going to sing Elvis, I'll be honest, I was worried. The audience laughed. Simon continued. Elvis Presley is one of the greatest singers who ever lived. And his songs are very hard to perform. Miguel nodded nervously. But, Simon said slowly, you didn't just sing the song. You owned it. The crowd cheered loudly again. Simon shook his head in amazement. I did not expect that voice to come out of someone your size. That was extraordinary. Miguel's eyes began to shine with emotion. Simon added one more thing. You know what I liked the most? Miguel waited. You were real. You didn't try to be Elvis, you were Miguel. And that's why it worked. The audience clapped once more. Then came the moment everyone waited for. The votes. Yes, said the first judge immediately. The crowd cheered. Yes, said the second judge. More applause. Simon paused dramatically. Miguel held his breath. Then Simon smiled slightly. That's a very big, yes. The audience erupted again. Miguel covered his face in disbelief as tears of happiness rolled down his cheeks. Backstage, his parents were crying too. His mother hugged his father tightly. That's our son, she whispered. Miguel had grown up in a small neighborhood in Cebu where music was everywhere but opportunities were rare. His father worked long hours as a fisherman, and his mother sold food in the local market. They didn't have much. But they always had music. Miguel used to sing Elvis songs while helping his father fix fishing nets. His dream was simple. One day, I want to sing on a big stage. And now he had done it. Standing on the stage of one of the biggest talent shows in the world. The host walked out and knelt beside him. How do you feel right now? Miguel wiped his eyes. Happy, very happy. The crowd laughed warmly. Do you think Elvis would be proud of you? The host asked. Miguel thought for a moment. I hope so. The audience cheered again. That night, the video of Miguel's performance spread across the internet like wildfire. Millions of people watched it. Comments poured in from all over the world. Goosebumps. This kid is amazing. Elvis would be smiling right now. Within days, the performance had millions of views. But the most important thing wasn't the views. It was the message. Sometimes the world judges you before you even begin. Sometimes people expect very little from you. But talent, passion, and courage have a way of surprising everyone. Even the toughest judges. And sometimes, all it takes is one small voice to make the entire world listen. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories of talent, courage, and dreams coming true.
Because somewhere out there right now, another kid with a dream is waiting for their moment to shine. Imagine a moment so unexpected that an entire auditorium suddenly forgets how to breathe. Imagine thousands of people staring at a stage where a tiny voice is about to rise, a voice that will turn doubt into disbelief and silence into thunder. That moment is exactly what happened on one unforgettable night when a small Filipino kid walked onto the stage of America's biggest talent show. Nobody knew his name yet. Nobody expected anything extraordinary. But within minutes, the entire crowd would lose their minds, and one of the toughest judges in the world would sit there completely stunned. Before we dive into this emotional story of courage, talent, and dreams, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that sometimes the biggest magic comes from the most unexpected places. The massive theater buzzed with excitement. Bright stage lights glowed across the auditorium while the audience chatted and laughed between performances. It had already been a long day of auditions. Some acts had impressed the judges, others had made them laugh, and a few had made them cringe. But everyone in the building still hoped to witness something truly special before the night ended. Backstage, a small boy stood quietly beside his parents. His name was Miguel Santos. He was only 10 years old and had traveled thousands of miles from the Philippines for this moment. His hands were clasped tightly together as he listened to the distant roar of the audience. Every few seconds he took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of nerves inside his chest. His mother gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Her eyes were full of love and encouragement. She whispered softly, reminding him that no matter what happened, they were proud of him. Miguel nodded, but he could still feel his heart racing. This stage was bigger than anything he had ever seen before. Miguel grew up in a small neighborhood in Cebu in the Philippines. Life there was simple and sometimes difficult. His father worked long hours as a fisherman, leaving early in the morning before the sun even touched the ocean. His mother sold homemade food in the local market to help support the family. They didn't have much money, but they had something far more important. They had music. Every evening after his father returned home, the family would sit outside their small house and listen to old songs playing from a worn-out radio. Among all those songs, one voice always stood out to Miguel. It was the deep, powerful voice of Elvis Presley. Even though Elvis had lived in another country and another time, his music somehow reached the small island where Miguel lived. Miguel began singing those songs when he was very young. At first it was just for fun while helping his father untangle fishing nets or while walking to school. But over time something magical began to happen. People started stopping to listen. Neighbors would gather outside their home just to hear the little boy sing. Teachers at his school encouraged him to perform during events. Slowly, Miguel began to dream about something bigger. He dreamed of singing on a stage where the whole world could hear him. That dream eventually led him to audition for one of the biggest talent shows on the planet. After many months of waiting, traveling, and hoping, Miguel finally found himself standing backstage at the audition that could change his life forever. The announcer's voice suddenly echoed through the hallway. Next up, Miguel Santos, from the Philippines. Miguel's parents hugged him tightly. His father whispered, "Sing with your heart." Miguel nodded and began walking toward the stage. The giant doors opened and bright lights poured across his face. The audience applauded politely as the small boy stepped onto the massive stage. Compared to the enormous auditorium, he looked tiny. But he kept walking until he reached the large X mark in the center of the floor. The judges watched him carefully from behind their desk. One of them leaned forward with curiosity while another smiled warmly. But one judge in particular studied Miguel with a skeptical expression. Simon Cowell had seen thousands of singers during his career. It was extremely difficult to impress him. Simon spoke first. "What's your name?" Miguel adjusted the microphone slightly and answered softly. "My name is Miguel Santos." Simon nodded. "And how old are you, Miguel?" "I'm 10 years old." A gentle wave of awe moved through the audience. Another judge smiled and asked where he was from.
When Miguel said he had traveled all the way from the Philippines, the crowd applauded more warmly.
Then Simon asked the most important question. "What are you going to do for us today?" Miguel swallowed nervously but answered with quiet confidence. "I will sing."
Simon leaned back in his chair slightly.
"Okay, and what song will you sing?" Miguel took a deep breath. "I will sing an Elvis Presley song."
The audience reacted with surprised murmurs. Elvis songs were legendary and extremely difficult to perform well, especially for someone so young.
Simon raised one eyebrow.
"Elvis, huh?" he said slowly.
Miguel nodded. Simon folded his arms. "Well, let's hear it."
The theater lights dimmed slightly as the music began. The gentle guitar intro of "Can't Help Falling in Love" filled the auditorium. For a moment Miguel closed his eyes. Then he began to sing. The first note left his mouth like a soft wave of emotion. "Wise men say, only fools rush in." The entire room instantly went silent. Nobody expected that voice. It was smoothed deep and filled with emotion far beyond what anyone imagined could come from a 10-year-old child. The audience leaned forward in their seats, completely surprised.
Miguel continued singing, his voice steady and full of feeling. "But I can't help falling in love with you."
A woman in the audience covered her mouth with both hands. Another man whispered to his friend in disbelief. The judges exchanged shocked looks. Simon's expression changed dramatically. His eyebrows lifted as he stared at the small boy on stage.
Miguel seemed to forget about the crowd as he sang.
The nervous child who had walked onto the stage moments earlier had disappeared. In his place stood a young performer completely lost in the music.
Like a river flows, surely to the sea.
His voice carried through the theater like something magical.
Each note felt pure and heartfelt. "Darling, so it goes, some things are meant to be."
The audience began clapping softly along with the rhythm.
Miguel's confidence grew with every word.
His voice became stronger as he reached the chorus again.
"Take my hand, take my whole life too." By now the judges were smiling in disbelief.
One judge leaned back in her chair, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing.
Simon leaned forward with his hands clasped together, watching Miguel intensely. When the final note arrived, Miguel held it perfectly before letting the music fade. For half a second the entire theater remained silent. Then suddenly the crowd exploded.
Thousands of people jumped to their feet, cheering and clapping as loudly as they could.
The sound filled every corner of the auditorium. Miguel looked shocked by the reaction.
His eyes widened as he stared out at the standing audience. One of the judges stood up immediately, applauding with excitement. Another wiped a tear from her eye. Simon remained seated for a moment, staring at Miguel with an expression of pure disbelief.
Then slowly, Simon stood up too.
The crowd roared even louder.
Miguel could hardly believe what was happening.
When the cheering finally calmed down, the judges began giving their comments. They praised Miguel's voice, his emotion, and the way he made such a classic song feel fresh and powerful again.
Finally it was Simon's turn to speak. Simon looked at Miguel carefully before talking. "You know, when you walked onto this stage and said you were going to sing Elvis, I honestly didn't expect much." The audience laughed softly. Simon continued. "But what just happened surprised me in the best possible way. Your voice is beautiful, your control is amazing, and most importantly, you sang with heart." Miguel smiled shyly. Simon leaned closer to the microphone. "That was incredible." The audience cheered again. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The votes.
The first judge said yes immediately. The second judge said yes with excitement. Finally Simon paused for dramatic effect before smiling slightly. "That's a yes from me too." Miguel's face lit up with pure joy as tears filled his eyes. His parents rushed onto the stage and hugged him tightly while the crowd continued cheering. That night Miguel's performance spread across the internet like wildfire. Millions of people watched the video within days.
Comments flooded in from around the world praising the tiny singer with the powerful voice. For Miguel and his family, that performance was more than just an audition. It was proof that dreams can travel across oceans. It was proof that talent can shine no matter where you come from. And most importantly, it reminded the world that sometimes the most powerful voices come from the smallest people. If this story touched your heart, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories of courage, talent, and dreams coming true. Because somewhere out there right now, another kid with a dream is waiting for the moment when the world finally listens.